Welcome to the Order of the Lily and the Eagle podcast. Kevin here.
And Larry here.
So, the last time we spoke about the psyche, or the world of emotions, or the soul. In this podcast, we're going to look at the third aspect that we identified. We call it the spirit, or the mind, or the realm of thinking or thoughts. So, in this particular instance, when we speak of the soul, we mean the world of emotions, and when we speak of spirit, we're speaking about the world of thought. This doesn't mean that when somebody says spirit, the human spirit, we're not talking about just thinking. There are other things that we don't have the word for, and often we end up calling it spirit, the invisible stuff that we can't actually physically touch. But for our purposes here, the realm of thinking, mind stroke spirit, and actually in French there's only one word for mind and spirit, it's the same word. And in the soul, it's the world of sentiments or emotions. Anyway, having got that out the way, the first thing we need to look at is the qualities of the mind or the spirit. So, as we've said, it thinks, it reasons, it organises, it plans, and it brings about the manifestation or the production of our ideas into the real world. Example. Wake up, folks. Here's an example. You want to do a kitchen, redo your kitchen. Idea. Now you've got to start thinking. So you've got to say, what colours? What tiles? Where's the basin going to go? Where's the cooker going to go? So you start planning it and organising it. And then once you've got your design in your head, you may go to a company or somebody else and you pay them to do the job. If you don't have the money, no kitchen. If you don't have a decent design, no kitchen, or a disaster of a kitchen. You can't do random kitchen. And it's a good example of why the universe isn't random. Because if it was random, then it would be a disaster in so many ways. Well, not that it isn't, but anyway, that's another topic. So in action there is our mind working, but it has to take into account the soul, our emotion, because no, I don't want that colour. I don't like that colour. I need this to be here. It needs to be organised in such a way. I've got a wheelchair and I can't use the basin up there. I need the basin at my height. And all those things that you have to take into account for your physical body and your emotional preferences. So the mind is the only one that can do that, because the body doesn't give two hoots about the soul, and the mind doesn't care. It's not that it doesn't care, it's just not relevant to it. It's got more than enough to be dealing with all the food, digestion and what have you. The same with the soul. It's not particularly bothered about the body nor about the mind, but it will stick its heels in, and you won't be able to do anything without the desire to do what the mind wants to do. So the mind is doing this juggling to get the soul on side so it can do what it needs to do. Now this sounds very odd, and the only thing I can say to you is you have to watch yourself over time and ask yourself, why can't I do that thing? My example is tax returns. I hate doing them, and yet I've got to do them. But my soul is protesting unbelievably. And you know what it's like, don't you, Larry? It's, you don't want to do it. But eventually the soul has to kind of agree. So you have to say to the soul, now what we'll do, we'll just do 1 month. Shall we just do 1 month? And then I'll give you a chocky biscuit to say thank you and, make you feel better. A chocky biscuit. Can I have 2? You can have 2 chocky biscuits, but we have to do at least 1 month of your tax returns. Is that a deal? Yes, it's a deal. Okay, so you do the first month, and then the soul goes, oh, well, that was easy. I don't know why I was making so much a drama about it. Let's do the whole lot. And in seconds, the whole thing is dealt with. And yet, it had taken you 4, 5, 6 months to build up the courage to, do it. Now, that's an extreme example, and I'm hamming it up a bit to give you the sense of what's going on inside. And if you can see that going on inside of yourself, then the one thing that can kind of cajole your being into doing stuff that it doesn't really want to do, but really does need to be done, then you can then start helping direct yourself, your being, in the right direction. Go to the dentist. The dentist says, I've got to do this root canal on you, but you have to have this injection. Immediately, the soul will kick off. The body is just saying, okay, whatever. But the soul is going, oh, I don't like needles. Oh, it's going to hurt. Oh, and so the mind has got to say to them, now calm down, calm down. We need to have this work done. If we don't, it'll be more pain. And you have to talk to your soul to persuade it to basically come on side or be on side with the thing that needs to be done. Because the soul, and you meet people where you would say, well, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. And how many people like that? Usually it's an aunt or whoever who you can give them all the logic and the reasoning, but no, they won't do it. And that's their soul rebelling. That might help you when you're dealing with these people in the future, if you can understand that dynamic. But it's easier to deal with yourself when you've got that rebellion going on inside. So the spirit can note the vices that we have physically, drug addiction and what have you, obsessive weightlifting, obsessive running, exercise and what have you. And it also can see the passions that take over our emotional state. But of course, the mind isn't pure and beautiful and wonderful. The spirit also has its own prejudices, mainly that have been implanted into our minds, but nevertheless, they will block us and stop us doing things. So we have to, with our mind, we have to be aware that often we're blocking ourselves for various reasons. The thing I'm recalling is that with a lot of women, they do tend to stop themselves achieving what they can achieve because they feel they've been crushed and repelled. Well, women don't do that, do they? It's like way back in when the poor little darlings couldn't drive a car, which of course was utter rubbish. There's so many things that, women were put into a little box and that was projected into their minds and they accepted that. And of course, if this has changed it now, well, partially changed in some countries, but there's still a long way to go, that the prejudices in our heads will prevent us achieving what we need to achieve. But okay, again, that's another subject that we could have a look at a later stage. So now we've got these three things that we're aware of: our body, our soul, and spirit, or the alternative names that you want to use. And there's a dynamic balance going on between the three things. The mind is the one that can see the other two and take into account the harmony between those things. And that's basically the job that we have to do in our mind to maintain serenity in our soul, health in our body, and keep our minds calm. Because when stuff happens, that's the best place to be in order to deal with the very difficult circumstances that happen out there. Yes, we get upset in the soul and our mind gets agitated and we can get very angry, for example. The mind can overpower our soul and body and we can mess up our health, diet and what have you, or we continually feed hate into our soul. So when you see that happening within yourself, you've got to step back and go, whoa, the mind can reason. Why are you getting like? What's the trigger for that? Why am I triggered by that? How can I change the trigger? And there's basically a very simple way. We call it affirmation. And we'll talk about that in another podcast. But by affirming something, we can overwrite or overcome things that are not beneficial for our being. And you will ask, what is beneficial for my being? Answer, I don't know. You didn't like that answer, did you? The answer is very simple. Each person has their own particular thing that they have to deal with. due to their upbringing, due to their parents, due to the school, due to the country they were brought up in, and all that kind of stuff, which has imprinted on each person a unique a unique set of things that basically are damages within the person. And your damage is completely different from my damage. And if I started describing what I had to deal with, you just wouldn't resonate with you. But each person has their own thing because we're all different. So the answer is, I can't tell you what's best for you.
It gets very confusing. And each of the three parts oftentimes tries to do wrong work because emotions try to do the thinking. Thinking tries to feel. I mean, they get in the way of each other.
It is true, the heart tries to think.
Usually very bad.
And it is a thing. It's called the second heart in kinesiology. And of course, the reasoning function tries to have emotions.
Overthinking,
Well, yeah.
Using the mind when it should just feel and act.
So you've got the instinct of the body, which just does things and you don't know why, it just happens. And then you've got intuitions that hit you in your soul, which give you a sense of that's the right thing to do. And you can't reason it. And then you get those elevated thoughts, insights, whatever you want to call them, in reasoning, in thinking, illuminations. Dong! So each level has its way of talking to the other parts, if we can say that. I'm not sure that's the right thing to say, but there is a sort of inherent communication between the three parts. But what's very important that we haven't spoken about, these three individual things, the mind, the psyche, and the body, everything goes through the psyche. So the spirit or mind cannot directly talk to the body. It has to go through the soul. That's why when we think of words that we want to say to somebody else, when we end up actually saying it through the organs of the body, the speech ability of the body, very often there's an additional emotional content to what we say that we didn't plan in our mind. And we'll often say, oh Christ, I wish I hadn't have said that. And that's the soul putting its pennyworth in, boom, how about that? And in the other way, what we get from our body first goes through the soul. So we get an emotional content to what we're looking at. For instance, look at that wonderful scene and that sunset. We're not just seeing that thing in our mind. We're also getting a wonderful emotional feeling that can often overwhelm us. But that's not the body doing it. Again, this is something you've got to research yourself more deeply to find out. Anyway, I'm going for lunch. So, shall we depart, Larry?
Sounds good to me.
Be well, be good.
Be happy.
Yeah, most of all.